This is an interesting analysis. It basically uses models of various kinds of tracking energy, renewable energy implementation, penetration into the system versus including carbon capture as part of the climate mitigation, climate action, and so on. It's modeling its scenarios, so obviously you have to be careful, but nonetheless, the alternatives offered here are interesting in terms of why carbon capture competes with other things, right? So carbon capture obviously will need lots of energy as well. Air pollution and global warming. So did I read the title? Energy, health, and climate costs of carbon capture and direct air capture. So costs are being energy, health, and climate costs of carbon capture and direct air capture, DAC, versus 100% wind, water, solar climate policies in 149 countries. Okay, what are the pros and cons that we are going to talk about? Air pollution, global warming, and energy insecurity are three major problems facing the world. This study first examines whether 149 countries can transition to 100% of their business as usual all sector energy to electricity and heat obtained from 100% wind, water, solar sources to solve these problems. WWS, wind, water, solar, eliminates energy-related air pollution, deaths, and CO2 equivalent emissions while reducing end-use energy needs by 54.4%, annual energy costs by 59.6%, and annual social, so that's energy plus health plus climate costs, by 91.8% among nations, giving energy and social cost playback times of 5.9 and 0.78 years respectively. Okay, it's a kind of investment and then payback times, not playback, sorry. Conversely, all of the above AOTA policies promoting carbon capture and or synthetic as opposed to natural direct air carbon capture, SDAC, to reduce or offset CO2 emissions trigger with full penetration of CC and SDAC across 149 countries, 60 to 80 trillion US dollars per year in social cost, 9.1 or 9.1 to 12.1 times the wind, water, solar social cost, and only 1.1 to 25.6% lower social costs than business as usual. So just pay attention to the options being considered. We talked about carbon capture in various contexts before, and generally I have argued that it's not scalable yet, but it's going to be part of the solution portfolio as we go forward, because we're never going to eliminate all emissions. So net zero or negative emissions are going to be accomplished by basically doing carbon capture, whereas this one says carbon capture is not necessary if we have 100% penetration of wind, water, solar, with lots of co-benefits on health, energy security, and social costs. Okay, so again, I'm going to be very brief because I like the paper in terms of the scenarios being offered, alternatives being offered, but the details of how it's done is a bit technical, and lots of assumptions always go into this: integrated assessment models, Excel sheet, spreadsheet models, and so on and so forth. Okay, what else are we talking about here? Even when all CO2 is stored, CC and SDAC increase air pollution, CO2 equivalent emissions due to capture inefficiencies and not capturing non-CO2 greenhouse gases. So carbon capture always talks about carbon, not methane, N2O, and other gases. So obviously CC and SDAC will not remove equivalent emissions, and of course energy needs are there in addition to air pollution, unintended air pollutions, let's say, and equipment costs relative to wind, water, and solar. Sensitivity tests reinforce this finding. So in the modeling, they can turn on, turn off things to show that no matter how they dice and slice this problem, WWS is going to come out ahead if there is 100% penetration. Although full penetration is extreme, any CC and SDAC level increases social cost and emissions substantially versus WWS. Thus, policies promoting CC and SDAC should be abandoned. So it's a very strong statement, and you have to take it for what it is. So the the abstract of the results is 2050 149 country annual cost in trillion dollars per year US compared to 2020 baseline. So you peg the dollar value to 2020. Energy private costs, energy health costs, and energy climate costs. So business as usual gives you here 80 trillion per year by 2050. So if you do business as usual with carbon capture and business as usual, so it's a combination of how you include carbon capture, whether you do it as SDAC or nature-based and so on and so forth. And you can see that you increase energy health cost here quite a bit. So the idea again is that if you do CC, that itself will need energy, plus it will be inefficient, it will produce air pollution and so on and so forth. But if you do business as usual carbon capture and introduce wind, water and solar, then you're going to pull the cost down to 60 trillion per year by 2050. Dramatically, if you only do 100% penetration of wind, water and solar, the cost drops to about 7 or 8 trillion dollars per year. Wow, right? That seems very convincing as to why we should completely abandon CC and SDAC. Do you really believe it? Well, you have to go and read all the assumptions. I will read some of the text. To date, though, no study, so I'm just jumping ahead in the introduction. They give you as to why we are considering all these options, and then say why none of the previous studies have addressed some of the things that they consider important. For example, no study has examined the social energy cost, private energy cost plus health cost plus climate cost. What you pay, what health cost comes with it, and climate cost is always involved. That's for implementing CC and DAC and their associated pipeline, storage and energy requirements versus the social cost of implementing WWS on a country or the world to address climate change. So option is everything with CC and DAC versus just WWS and abandon CC and DAC. The purpose of this study is to perform such an analysis across 149 countries with new energy data and considering two specific policies: attaching CC to fossil fuel and bioenergy electricity generating and industrial point CO2 sources, and using DAC to offset mobile and distributed CO2 sources. So once you put it into the air, you have to do direct air capture, otherwise you have to rely on the point sources. The study first compares the costs and benefits of 149 countries of cost and benefit among the 149 countries of meeting business as usual demand with BAU energy sources versus electrifying BAU energy and meeting the new demand with 100% WWS. There are many details there. Business as usual basically means we are not doing much, but if you keep using BAU for your economic growth, then you can still do with 100% WWS. It then compares both scenarios with applying CC DAC to all business as usual energy related CO2 sources without electrification and using either BAU or WWS electricity and heat to power the CC DAC equipment. So again, these are scenarios, so they try all combinations. Such scenarios examine whether CC or DAC can help reduce carbon dioxide equivalent, CO2 equivalent, air pollution, energy need, CO2 equivalent emissions, air pollution, energy needs, and or private and social energy costs relative to WWS. CO2 equivalent is, of course, when we convert the emissions of methane and to CO2 equivalent using global warming potential and so on. I'm getting a call. Hold me. Sorry about that. I meant hold, not hold me. Okay, some delivery. I have to take it. So let's go back to reading the text here. So we are doing all, display mode and then pointer. Okay, so although this study compares unrealistically extreme cases of all CC DAC with all WWS, such a comparison is necessary because it distills whether investing in CC DAC is an opportunity cost relative to investing in WWS. Opportunity cost in a simple way is you take path A, then you cost is different than if you would have taken cost B. That's called the opportunity cost. If scenarios with different mixes of CC DAC and WWS were performed, it would not be possible to conclude whether one is an opportunity cost. Instead, using a mixture requires assuming that both CC DAC and WWS should be used before determining whether one has any benefits relative to the other. This reinforces the main concern with all of the above policies, that they do not distinguish between good and poor solutions. So some justification as to why we should try these extreme scenarios. So I'm going to just jump ahead to the discussion, remembering that according to this modeling study, this scenario study, CC DAC are simply not worth pursuing. That 100% WWS is the best way to go in terms of air pollution, health cost, energy cost, and so on. Results here suggest that CC and DAC, even when powered by WWS and piped to underground storage with no storage loss, increase private and social energy costs tremendously relative to WWS itself, while continuing energy security problems. Okay, so there is some subtle detail there in terms of using WWF and doing carbon capture and DAC, and then assuming inefficiencies in CC and DAC, and thinking that there are unintended consequences of that in terms of air pollution, etc., health. Okay, even relative to business as usual, CC and DAC powered by BAU fuels increase energy cost and health costs while hardly decreasing total social costs. CC and DAC powered by WWS also increase private energy cost while only slightly decreasing health and social costs versus BAU. So CC and DAC here are seen as big producers of health cost and energy cost. These results apply not only to the base, so we didn't look at the figure, but also to sensitivity tests, and including one most favorable to CC and DAC. So just make sure you understand, if we do CC and DAC, it will require energy, and energy may come from renewables, completely wind, water, and solar, but that will still take away energy from everything else. So now you are thinking about energy security and unintended air pollutions from CC and DAC. This analysis assumes 100% of captured CO2 stored. However, in 2023, 82.1% of CO2 captured worldwide was used for enhanced oil recovery EOR, during which 30 to 40% of the captured CO2 is released back to the air. So people are arguing that basically CC and DAC are going to give us a moral hazard, where we are going to say, well, we are capturing the carbon anyway, so we don't need to reduce emissions so much, we'll just take it out. So this part also has to be considered in all these unintended consequences. Another 20 to 80% of the captured CO2 is emitted from the additional oil burned. Every ton of CO2 injected into the oil field produces 2 more barrels of oil if you pump it in and push oil out. So we are in a kind of a hallucination about carbon capture being the savior, and this paper is basically saying completely abandon those things. Under the CC scenarios, oil will be consumed for energy through 2050, suggesting that captured CO2 will continue to be used for enhanced oil recovery. As such, some figures underestimate significantly the social costs of CC and DAC, which means it's even worse than they are saying in this paper. In sum, all of the above climate policies that propose the use of CC and or DAC to reduce energy-related CO2 instead increase air pollution, CO2 equivalent emissions, pipelines, fossil mining, fossil infrastructure, energy requirements, private energy costs, and social energy costs substantially relative to the policies requiring 100% wind, water, and solar. That's the main message. Whereas this study examined unrealistically extreme cases of CC and DAC, the conclusions should apply to any level of carbon removal above zero. Very strong statement. The conclusions should be intuitive, given WWS eliminates all energy related CO2 equivalent and air pollution and reduces energy requirements relative to business as usual. Given the speed and magnitude of changes needed for an energy transition, all of the above policies promoting CC and DAC may, in the limit, cause millions of unnecessary air pollution deaths each year and substantial climate change in both the short term by slowing the elimination of black and brown carbon, tropospheric ozone and methane, and long term by slowing the elimination of CO2. So short term by slowing the elimination of black and brown carbon, tropospheric ozone and methane, and long term by slowing the elimination of CO2. As such, policies promoting CC and synthetic DAC should be abandoned. This conclusion does not apply to natural direct air carbon capture, which means if you used somehow nature-based solutions to take away scalable gigaton level CO2, then this team that published this paper has no issue with that. They are only worried about synthetic DAC and energy intensive carbon capture, assuming that as long as that happens, some of it will go to enhanced oil recovery and fossil fuel for energy will continue, or wind, water and solar will go into giving energy to CC and DAC. So it's kind of a detailed argument with all sorts of modeling involved, but we have to obviously follow to see if CC and DAC will be done in a very safe way without all the unintended consequences that are assumed in this study. Okay, I'm going to leave it. I included it, but did not include all the details because it's a very interesting argument. So I wanted to leave it here. Okay, see you in the next topic.